Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time, welcome to AIDEAS podcast with a quote from Christian Aristowski, a guy who founded the React Academy. He says, managers have been vibe coding forever. Tell a dev to implement a new feature. Dev makes changes to the code. Manager tests the app. Manager does not read the code. Manager complains about bugs. Dev makes changes to fix bugs. Manager doesn't make and read the code again. Dev says, done, try now. Manager says, gee, but be faster next time, or insults the living hell out of the dev. Repeat. What do you
It's a
think
good
about
day to
vibe
be a
coding?
manager.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually have seen another place online where somebody mentioned that people that are used to being managers are actually more effective vibe coders because they're kind of used to this way of delegation or whatever. And I can say guilty personally in terms of it's very natural for me to say, hey, I need you to go do this, spin off an agent to go do this, spin off 20 of them, go do this. I need this result to be more like this. I need you to make this look like this. It's got to have this kind of a feel. And the more I work with it, and the more I get accustomed to the capabilities of these technologies for especially agentic coding and software engineering, the more I get a sense of how demanding I could be on these models and what sorts of results are possible. And really the fine tuning of the vision and the sense of how we can get to the vision becomes this skill that is really, really leveraged by these things. And I think that importantly, there's a lot of the early adopters of this technology, no doubt, are software engineers and software project managers. It's what's native to coding. And yet what is possible with this now is really so much beyond just creating softwares for software's sakes, software as a product, software as something to go ship or put on the app store or sell to other people or market as a service. What's possible is this whole field of vibe working where when I was at a corporation and corporate finance, when I was out of college, I had a manager who would tell me stuff like, hey, I need you to build this model. I need you to go gather all this data from these sources and create this thing that puts these things together like this so that we can make X kind of decisions with it and use it for X purpose. And he would have kind of a vision for what we needed or what the thing was. And or another example could be we want to decide if we should launch this innovation. What should the pricing be? What would the gross margins be? Is it worth the capex? And what will the return on invested capital be? And so then the Claude 4.6 of the day would go out and go talk to people and go gather data from this resource and download it from this database and see what's trustworthy and figure out how to make my index matches match up and build a financial model and connect it to this other data source, figure out how it ties into the company's goals and build it out. And then I'd meet and I'd show it to him and I'd be like, here, this is the thing, this is the thing. He'd be like, okay, more of this, less of this thing isn't clear. What's this number here? And can you look into that a little more? And I needed to also encompass this other realm of context. And now my own financial analysis work or whatever is kind of similar, except it's with this set of agents that's way better than I was when I was a 22-year-old fresh out of college trying to figure out what flavors of ice cream Unilever should launch next year. So I will go in and yesterday, for example, I wanted this analysis on how we're doing on booking our leads into calls. Are we following up with them? Are we doing this and that? So I pulled 11,000 call recordings and had agents spin off and transcribe them and then categorize them based off of what kind of a call this was. Was this a lead or not? And then outcome score. And so for all of the leads, I categorized which ones did we get a hold of, which ones did we not get a hold of. The ones that we didn't get a hold of, I had it go pull the call logs and the CRM logging and see, okay, did we actually follow our follow-up sequence? And when did it fall off? And what was the result when we did versus what we didn't? And what do we need to do to get a hold of more people? And then over here, I had another agent say, okay, when we did get a hold of them, what prevented us from getting through? Was it that they weren't qualified? And was it that we ran into various objections? And what were the objections? And what are the three most common ones? And what's our script to overcome them? And yada, yada, yada. And so this isn't really a software that I was building, so to speak, but yet I was tapping into this API, I was tapping into this API. I was spinning off primarily coding agents to go execute all of this work in a very structured way, with me kind of at the helm of the roadmap and what was getting done, but with hundreds of agents actually going and deploying and categorizing all of these 11,000 calls and digging into this and looking into this and sort of steering this whole ship of a swarm of knowledge work. And what I find more and more is that these sorts of projects are the frontier of what's possible with AI, where it's just so much different what I could do there as opposed to just talking into my chat window with Claude about, hey, I want to book more calls and what should my strategy be? But actually the ability to use 11,000 actual conversations as data and seeing in real life, where are we getting in the way of not getting hold of them? Where are we actually not overcoming objections, etc.? This is the sort of thing where it's like this hub coding and knowledge work, and it's super leveraged and it's really really powerful, but it's a totally new skill. Like, this wasn't an existing, you didn't do this when it was 5 years ago and you had to manually write every line of code. It was not practical to have workflows that moved in this way. Now it is. It's a new frontier of this technology being deployed for real business applications. It doesn't feel like how a non-computer scientist like me would envision code, kind of like how you write books with code, and now I write books with code too. And this this set of how this can be deployed goes so far beyond how we conceive softwares. How do you think about this way that so this and to tie it back to the early quote, this manager that's pointing at things with this dev, it's not just with this dev. It's also that we're basically a manager, and our $200 subscription gets us a team of 10 devs, a team of 10 data analysts, a team of 10 marketing analysts, a team of 10 of any entry level job that you want, that will confidently hand you whatever you ask for. And you do have to have the taste to say, are we going in the right direction? Does this line up with reality? And what is this? How does this shake out with my instincts? And where do I need to push back and push further? How do you think about the breadth and scope of what these coding agents can do, and how it's really not limited to how we would think about software, at least a few years ago?
Yeah, it brings software and the ability to create systems which transform input to an output which you want, which is according to your vision, into the realm of possibilities. And now it democratizes it. Everyone with natural language clarity and a vision can utilize these systems to create something useful for him or her. Like, it's the age of personalized software, because everybody who has a vision and can articulate it clearly or find it out in a conversation has now the ability to create such systems. And you're right about that. Managers probably are the better users of these systems. People who know what needs to be done so that a business outcome is reached, they also can formulate the problem much better. So it's about grasping, getting a hold on, formulating the correct problem and the correct challenge, because this is probably the most important part of a business, so that you can reach business outcomes, business goals. You need to tackle the right choke points, the right bottlenecks, so that you can widen these bottlenecks. And nowadays you can just take the bottleneck, take the intelligence pipe intelligence in, widen the bottleneck, and then the flow is up again, and maybe you will find a new challenge to apply intelligence to, so that work will never stop.
Hmm.
So yesterday I met a guy who already inspired this thinking in me. He said to me, okay, and he's a fairly successful guy with multiple businesses, so much experience, a designer. And he said, yeah, you know what I do? Everybody tells me this is impossible, this is impossible. But what I do is I go from the point, this would be nice to have it like that. And then I'll tell it to someone who actually finds out the best way to reach what would be nice to do. So he's a shaper, so to say. Like your personality profile is a shaper as well. You are steering possibilities into reality through your grasp on how things should look like and should behave like, and pushing through the roadblocks so that you can go step by step and bringing your vision into the realm of possibilities into a reality which you inhabit, into a productive business system so that you actually shape the system. Similar analogy is the analogy between working in your business or working on your business. People who work in their business, they cannot scale themselves, but people who work on the business, they define roles, responsibilities, business outcomes, KPIs, and measures so that you can have a systematic way of providing and producing value so that you create the factory as the product of your applied energy and applied creativity. And like you said, never underestimate what you can do with your energy and with your creativity. So,
Mm.
Peyton, how to find the value, which is now closer than ever to anybody? How to find real value and real fit?
I think you're right that it's like you want to start higher and higher level on the planes of abstraction in terms of what you want. The higher the higher level you can make your goal in a lot of these cases, the better you can actually see the bird's eye view and the most direct path to accomplishing that goal and let go of the old constraints of the old ways of doing things when you didn't have the same resources at hand. And so, for example, if I was thinking in the old way of working with these calls, for example, then I would have used this to actually just pull 30 recordings and sent it to somebody to listen to 30 recordings and then say, what do you think we should be doing differently? But you can accomplish a much better goal by actually having data on 10,000 recordings that nobody has to listen to, and you just turn it into a signal directly rather than having so much the small sample size really distort the takeaways of what you do with much more time. The other thing, though, that I would highlight in all of this is the part of the manager that I think is really valuable, and it is in these things. The early quote does show this common frustration of somebody that's working for a manager or whatever. And I remember being 22 and having a very experienced finance manager, and I would go work and I would make this beautiful spreadsheet, and I had this awesome work product and this and that, and then he would say, it needs to be a lot simpler. And I'd be like, what? I built all these features. Exactly. But he was right, and he was right, and that taste was important, and you do need somebody with that higher level instinct from experience, and I think now I do see myself saying, "This needs to be simpler, there's too much noise that you can't see the signal," and this the way that you really need in order to get the value you need from this, and one element of that is actually having this intuitive sense on when to push back. And so yesterday I had several this call project I brought up was one. I also did a giant gross margin study where I calculated the job cost and the total gross margin of every job that we've done so far this year. So this huge data project involved parsing tons of contracts and looking up the components for each one and mapping the clocked hours from our timesheet that everyone worked every day with their hourly rate and reconciling it with our payroll system and reconciling it with QuickBooks and all of this big data project. And throughout, you get a lot of these headline conclusions where it flashes this thing is this, and you have to be like, I don't know about that number. Look into that number, calculate it this, double check it versus this. You have to actually have this sense, or it's important in my experience with these large projects and management type stuff to have this sense of, okay, I'm surveying this whole thing, and that doesn't pass my sniff check. That doesn't pass my sniff check. I need you to validate those with these three different ways to make sure this is a robust number before I act upon it, because that goes contrary to what I was expecting. And sometimes it says, no, really, I validated it here, here, and here. This is the real thing. And that's very important for me to readjust my blind spots and priors and strategy and all that. And then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you're right. That number was really noise. I was going off of this and half of the fields weren't completed. And so for example, on a certain type of job that I had, I was like, that number doesn't make sense. It was like, oh yeah, it was missing a labor figure for 35% of the job. So it's like, okay, make sure everyone has a labor number and that you actually are reconciling it with our payroll system and this and that. And so the ability to have this instinct or this intuitive sense of what something smells right and wrong, this this is something that you can't just read in a textbook. It's something that comes from experience and sense, but this is an extremely leveraged part of the manager. Now, the better we are at this, higher level of I have a vision, I have good taste on this vision. I know when it needs to be simple. I know when we're going in the right direction. I know when this is going to yield important stuff versus when we're just going on a tangent and it's not going to yield the results. And I know when to pressure test all of these various things that we're suggesting. The pressure testing it is really this highest leverage point that we can insert into the system as the human in the loop with taste and judgment, at least on this stage of technology. Even with Fable 5, I find it's so leveraging, but my taste and judgment is still very, very important as the sort of rudder that steers the ship or the compass that steers the ship in the right
Mm.
direction and make sure we don't get distracted over here and steer into the wrong way because we get kind of caught up in a rabbit trail over this or that or have an incorrect assumption at some fundamental stage. What's
Mhm.
your, as kind of a final concluding thought, with the current stage of technology, these incredible teams that we have of really 10 entry level employees of every single function, every single knowledge function available at our fingertips that can now agentically do stuff in Chrome, they can agentically do stuff all over our computer, spin up 1,000 subagents and do things in parallel to where you just have this crazy amount of data processing and insight throughput and small action throughput. What are the ways that we should look to increase our leverage with these things? And where should we understand the place in the value chain that we really want to be in order to get the best results in the world with what we're working with?
We want to have a great idea about what are the high standards in the field we are working in. What is the process which provenly delivered results with high quality and fast? And so, for example, in the software realm, it's, yeah, you have acceptance criteria, then you ripple down, and then you have integration criteria, then you have units that you want to build out, and so on. So you want to have a goal you want to fulfill for the customer with a software system. And at the end of the development cycle, the customer needs to acceptance test it. So he needs to test it so that he can accept it. And this still holds true. But if you don't know that this is a standard, that you write software tests so that on changes there will be no regressions which go undetected, then you don't use that within your vibe coding. So this is where experience pays off. But you can gain that experience a lot faster when you dive into what are the standards of high quality providers in my realm where I work in. And then translate these standards into maybe a comparison how you do the work in your business right now. And then you highlight the points where through your current process, maybe bottlenecks emerge versus how the standards actually are and what leads to these standards. And oftentimes it's probing, testing, pressure testing, making it more robust, making it simpler, removing the part, accelerating the cycle time after everything has been done in terms of making it simpler and optimizing it, removing it. So really ask yourself the questions. What are the proven standards in the field and how can I utilize it and translate it for AI into my work processes so that I can steer the ship because I have a more robust ship. I can steer the ship also through storms because it's more robust and the rudder is much more robust than before. This is the thing that I would point to. Peyton, what would you point to?
I do think it's, for me right now, a lot about identifying the best possible ways to create value or to solve problems. And so to identify our problems as truly the important thing, and then getting this super demanding, how can this be easy? How can we accomplish a great result in a short amount of time with very few resources? What would it look like to just cut through this problem and have an extremely durable, self-integrating, elegant, effective solution that wouldn't have been possible 2 years ago? to open up to new possibilities of solutions becoming online, that we actually have to have a new vision to be able to recognize how we can do these things that we wouldn't have been able to do without these resources and tools. That's my intention, to really look at, there is no unsolvable problem. I can solve any of these problems, and I have to assume that there's a good solution to all of these problems. And so let me approach it from there, and let me not settle for something that's ineffective and full riddled with crappy compromises to the problems that are actually much more tractable than they used to be. And insert the taste kind of throughout the journey. This is the prioritization and the vision that I think is so powerful and so leveraged now.
Wonderful. Let us create value with our creativity and our energy so that we will fulfill whatever we are here for. Peyton, such a
Yes.
pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, my friend. Enjoyed the conversation. I will see you on the next one.
See you soon. And thank you for tuning in to AI Ideas Podcast.
The ideas. Bye.